What's going on? Are we live? Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hey, it's your boy Miles Stroter. I'm here live on a new venture. I'm excited about this new venture. You all know me from being an actor, entrepreneur, entertainer, philanthropist, man of many hats. But before I put on all these different hats, I was a football player, student athlete, and I got my start at King College Prep High School. About a month ago, one of my coaches from King, he hit me up like, Miles, dude, you got a wealth of knowledge, dude. You was a highly touted, recruited player from out of high school. You went on and went to college, got a scholarship. And, man, what's your take on this? What do you think about this? Well, what do you think about that? He's like, you know what? We need to jump on and host a show, man, when we talk about all this knowledge that we've gained over the years. And I think we could be a tool for young recruits coming up in the game to help them navigate this new landscape of high school sports, high school football in this NIL era. And he was like, yeah, let's hop on and do a podcast, man. We can call it a DeProgram. I'm like, yeah, because they do need to do a lot of unlearning before they can learn some stuff about the game and about the business of college football and high school football. And so, yo, welcome to the DeProgram, man. This isn't just a podcast. It's more like a reset. We're here to break down systems that shape athletes before they even understand the game. This is the DeProgram. I'd like to welcome onto the show my co-host, my confidant, the man that's responsible for developing me not only as an athlete, but as a human, as a pro. When he first saw me at King High School, he's like, hey, man, you're a pro. And I think I lived up to that, and I can finally say that I'm a pro in life. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Brother LeAlan Jones.
Don't refer to me as a coach.
The man,
don't refer to me as a
the
coach.
legend.
No. Oh, don't refer to me in any of those capacities, young man. How are you doing, Miles Stroter?
I'm doing well. Like he said, he's not just a coach. He's somebody who's been in the trenches, man, doing the work over the past 2 decades. Man, he saw me, saw the potential in me, helped develop
3
me.
decades, Miles.
Three
decades.
Correct. We're old.
Yeah, I'm OG status now.
3 decades. My apologies. But like I said, he not only helped me develop as an athlete, but develop me into becoming a pro in life. This is Coach Jones. What's up, man?
How are you doing, man? Really sorry it took us so long to get to this, but we're here now.
Yeah, we are here, dude. Give me give the viewers a background, dude. Wait, what made you start coaching for real, dude?
Well, I mean, I had a lot of opportunities as a young man, and I think, coaching for me was something I found after I was able to do a lot of, I guess, people would consider to be very exceptional things. And I think being exposed to those exceptional things since I was 13 years old, having the ability to do a world-renowned documentary, award-winning documentary, and actually a second one, it became a book and then it became a movie. People think that, but the reality is I think that's what gets you there is because it's all by deduction. That's what got me here.
Okay, was there a moment early on when you became a coach where you was like, hey, there's something not right about this, dude?
I think coming back and having a high profile and not really having a profile that suggests you shouldn't be coaching is when you start to see things that may be a little bit unacceptable.
Okay. Well, so, but when you came back, did you see anything that was right about the situation?
I saw guys like you. I mean, when I left Florida State and came home and saw what was going on at that institution, able to see college football at that level and then come to King College Prep, what would that be, 06 for you? 06?
That was 03.
03. When when I came back home from college and we get these students at the former King High School, King College Prep, and you see kids come in that can be turned into athletes, but more importantly, that will have the grades to go to college. Because what happened at King High School, you had a lot of great athletes, but there wasn't a emphasis on academics to marry the student with the athlete. So a lot of those athletes never really got the opportunities they would have if in fact they would have had the student precede the athlete.
Wow. Okay. And so I'm gonna pick up where he left off. I came into King High School at eighth grade, coming up there for early workouts. My principal, Dr. Coles, she left my school, Keller, and then became the principal at King. And that's what brought my parents up there, because they were interested. They really liked Dr. Coles, and we just wanted to give it a look. And so we pulled up there, and that's where we met Coach Williams. And my dad stood outside and talked to Coach Williams, but I went inside, and that's where I met Coach LeAlan. And I just remember him being real aggressive, real like somebody I had never met before, a personality type, archetype that I had never came in contact with. And he was challenging, but it was also like a real uplifting at the same time. And it was insulting, but it was encouraging. It was oxymoron, a complete mind fuck. Excuse my expression, but
It was. I mean, but that's again, I think that's where you met me at a cross section of knowing what I can influence legitimately as opposed to what I would try to do perceptively. And I think the career track that people would have assumed that I would have went, which would have been media or politics or journalism, I knew that I had already reached my potential in that, and it was not going to be fulfilling for me to go into those fields having already acquired so much success and yet not necessarily having done the groundwork. That can create a lot of resentment from people in institutions, and that's what I had gleaned being 21, 22, 23 years old, is that when people look on your resume and they see career awards and, you haven't even done an internship, that's not going to mesh well, because if you get the experience with the accolades, that would have meant by 27, 28 years old, there would have been nobody to have tried to, nobody could have been my leader in those fields by the time I was 30 years old. And knowing that I had to make the sacrifice of saying, well, I would rather do something that I'm totally committed to be able to offer the transformational discussion we had when I first met you.
So that discussion, man, that shit led to me jumping right into the fire.
But yes, I remember. Yeah, a lot of grease popping, a lot of hot grease, buddy. It's a lot of hot grease in them days.
A lot of hot grease in them days. Like, I hated every minute of it freshman year. I think we were in like the lowest conference, the intra-city
We were in 8-man football. We were in 8-man football because we didn't have enough
football.
kids.
Right. When I first got up there, they were in 8-man football. And it was from then the transition to my freshman year where I first played 11-man football. And we were essentially freshmen and sophomores playing against juniors and seniors on varsity. They didn't let us do frost off, so they had to prepare us, or we would get hurt, And so, to the best of their ability, they worked us out. They worked us tough. It's blood, sweat, and tears.
It was tough, but it was tough because it had to be. But I think, what would I say, 2 years later, 3 years later, you were playing in the championship game?
3 years later, I was playing in the championship game. And so we'll get there, but I just wanted them to understand the process. And what we endured as kids. I was 13 years old, playing against varsity football players. And so in the end, that's why I developed the way I did, because I was literally thrown into the fire. And so we're going to go to after freshman year. Sophomore year was a little bit better. We won a little more games, but I really just started to grasp the concept of football and what I was doing, what my job was as an offensive lineman. And that came with a rigorous off-season workout, man. Saturday mornings, LeAlan would come. He'd come pick us up. He'd come pick me up, come pick up my teammate Jeff, and we'd be putting in work, real work. And that's where I really gained the confidence going into that next season, until where the second off season, I was ready. He said, "You ready to go to camps?" And so that's where I went to my first football camp. And the first one I went to was the University of Michigan camp. And man, I just was putting those skill set to use again. And I was big, so they put me against the best lineman at the camp, which happened to be the best lineman in the country. And I literally held my own as a sophomore against the seniors and the juniors. And I remember Lloyd Clark coming up to me and with a notepad, and I remember Tom Lemon coming up to me with a notepad, and I remember going back to Chicago from Ann Arbor that Monday, and they did a write-up on me in the sport news, and they said I was one of the top underclassmen ranked in the country, and that really just changed my reality overnight, dude, over a weekend. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
all I remember, and as much as you talk about that, I don't remember anything about it, but I do remember them Saturday mornings. I do remember them after school workouts. I do remember those stairs. I do remember, you crying because you didn't want to lower your butt in squats. But, when it hit, it's like it became a blur, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And so then that's when he's like, go to this Illinois camp. And we went down to Illinois, me and my dad. And then I remember LeAlan pulled up shortly after we got there. Jeff came with him. And man, we put on a show. And that's where I received my first offer from a Division I program. And LeAlan was the orchestrator behind that, man. We got a picture of him sitting there politicking with the coaching staff, making some moves.
Yeah, getting myself fired from being a high school coach because I was being able to get you guys recruited.
Yeah, and so that turned into a whirlwind. We get back to Chicago, and like you said, we in the championship game junior year. I remember I think we winning 9-2 junior year, which led us to the city championship versus with Marshall High School.
Yeah, we whooped them pretty good.
Yeah, we whooped Marshall High School, and so that put us in the playoffs. And I think we had probably like in 2 weeks, we probably played 6 playoff games and won every game. Yeah. I think it was to then leading us deep into the playoffs where we end up playing what's the school no more, the school that we practice against every day.
Harper
played against
High School.
Harper. Yeah, so we played
they got us that day, but we should have never been who practices against the team and then plays them in the playoff game that week. That should tell you a lot about
our coach was friends with their coach, and he would have them come up there after practice, after school every day and practice with us. We were doing joint practices in high school.
But a joint practice the week that you play them in a playoff game.
Yeah, that's just different right there. And so
that should tell you a lot. That should we'll touch on that in further discussions. But I don't think anybody in America could ever say that played sports, any sport, that the week you have to play an opponent in a playoff game, that you're practicing, having joint practice sessions with that team, and you play them at the end of the week in a playoff game.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody in America could ever say that they have had that experience. We both can say we had that experience.
Yeah, definitely had that experience. And so then we sent those seniors off away from our program, but a lot of great athletes, but nobody got a scholarship in the class before me. And so essentially I would be the first scholarship athlete that came out of King College Prep. So that led us to senior year, and it was a whirlwind. We had everybody from Charlie Weiss at the school, Pete Carroll at the school. It was a real situation, and things got real interesting in the recruiting process. LeAlan made the move so that I could go to Illinois, and I saw Illinois as just like a school to put on the back burner just in case. I didn't like no other schools, and so I was at Notre Dame every weekend. I went out to visit USC, went to Stanford, enjoyed the recruiting process, but blindly enjoyed the recruiting process, because the recruiting process is something that you really shouldn't be enjoying. You should treat it like a business trip, because that's the process in which you're going to see where you're going to be spending the next 4 years as a student athlete.
But in today's game, where you might be spending the next 6 months to a year.
Hello?
You there? Yeah.
Like I said, senior year, it made a real whirlwind. I end up not committing anywhere to any school, waiting and expecting an offer from Notre Dame, and they were kind of like cat and mousing me, man. But I was just not knowing the process and getting.
You were 17 years old. It wasn't for you to know the process. It was for the people around you to make the best decisions for you based upon where you were at, and you were going to be a mid-year, and that was a selling point to Illinois. Was that you were a kid that was smart enough to leave, to graduate in December of your senior year and enroll in January, and get almost 2-3 years of football development. And same thing, basically the same thing that happened to Jeff a year later. Yeah,
so like you said, I was a mid-year, graduated high school a semester early with 29 to ACT, 3.5 GPA. Everything was perfect, and so I thought. And then the politics of football hit me in the face, and so here we was 2 weeks before signing day, and I didn't have a school to go to. And so that's when the coaches from Southeast Missouri came downstairs, said that they were at
But
a
was I
coaching
there though?
clinic.
Was I there? Was I at that
You were
school
not
at that?
there, though. You were not there. I don't know what happened to you. So what
Yeah,
happened, man? Where did you go,
I
dude?
think what happens, you got to think, Miles, if that was 2007 for you,
7, yeah.
and that was 2007, that was 19 years ago. So I would have been early 20s. I got phased out of that. I got phased out based upon I was not the head coach, and we both came from a school where we had a Hall of Fame head coach, very, very old school in his ways, and it was difficult because you got to remember, Miles, you wouldn't only have been the first Division I recruit at King College Prep. You would have been the first Division I player that came out of King in probably so if that's 2006, 2007, I don't think King had a kid go straight Division I since the late 80s, which might have been Sean Williams and them, or Peyton Minner. So it might have been 25 years that there had been a Division I player at King High School. So, and you weren't a Prop 48. You just neighbored off your a 29 ACT, 3-point-some GPA. That wasn't happening in them guys coming out of King High School in the late 80s.
So when you stepped into King, what was the idea? Like, what did you think? What did you think was about to happen?
When I came back to coach, or when I went to King,
When you came back to coach.
When I came back to coach, I knew that we had an opportunity to rebuild King High School in a way that had never been done before, because all of the student athletes that would come into King High School were kids that already had the Stay 9 scores, which is the academic indicator to demonstrate that they had legitimate college trajectories. And what that meant is that we had to develop the athlete and develop the mentality. And that's what me and Coach Tremaine, being two former alumni that really, played football and love football and really, love the school that we came from. And we felt as if, when we were student athletes at King High School, that we didn't get to compete at the level that we prepared to play at. And so as players that became coaches at the same school, we coached with the mentality that we knew we were better than other programs, and we just had to be able to, transition the program from being at the mediocre level it was when we were players and bringing new things to the table and being able to work with young men and work with families that were willing to make those sacrifices, like getting up on Saturday mornings and coming to get the extra work in, so that when our guys competed, that they had a foundation to do so. And so, being young assistant coaches, that's where it gave us the stamina, but we were very naive in terms of knowing what we were up against. Not only as other teams, but internally.
Initially, out of elementary school, what was your take on King? Why King?
Out of elementary school, I had some different opportunities coming out of high school.
Let's hear about those opportunities, man.
Well, we'll talk about them in depth in the next phase, but I just had a lot of legitimate opportunities. So to go to King High School with those opportunities that were in my grasp, I went to King High School because I wanted to follow in the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. And I had to humble myself, with all of the attention I was getting nationally and internationally for the documentary work. My position was, if I was as smart as people thought I was, I could support the legacy of Martin Luther King High School in the spirit of Martin Luther King, and that would be enough. And it was done naively. I think I've learned a lot since then, but that was my line of thinking at 13.
Wow. Okay. So what about the football aspect of King when you were there? What made you say I can coach up under this head coach? What was it?
As a coach, I thought that my time at Florida State would provide and to know, because I went to Florida State not because of being a student. I really went there to study football. I mean, and I got to do it at a very high level. And I thought I could come back with that information and connect the dots. And what happens is you're very naive, because it's like you have, when you're in a leadership position, is it about being in a leadership position or is it about leading? Right. And that's when I learned the difference.
What were you fighting against?
I was fighting against an institutionalized mentality of people just wanting to have titles and be in leadership positions, but to really not truly lead. And that's when I realized the influence I had, even in not being in an environment conducive to being transformational in terms of leadership development, I became very connected to the young men that I coached and the families that I work with, because I knew I was laying a foundation that, if done the right way, would lead to relationships like I have now, where, even, I haven't coached you in over 20 years, but our relationship is built on, basic respect from that time that we spent from your freshman year of high school until, the present moment.
Yeah. So what did you see that the kids weren't getting that you could provide? Like what
just like in that first discussion that we had, Miles. I mean, just knowing that they just had to not think, and just, learning how to not be so pensive and be thinkers, but to learn how to learn a process that then allowed your thinking to enhance that process. And I knew we weren't dealing with the regular King High School student. We were dealing with young men who had intellectual and academic rigor. So if you structured things in that way, you didn't need to coach from aggression like you did when the school did not have the academic standards, because you didn't have the family structures to support that student athlete. So when I was able, what I was able to see is that I could work with families to help the student athlete. That's why I had a relationship with both of your parents. That's why I had a relationship with your other relatives, because I knew that if they trusted me, that you would trust me more, and then that would allow for the inhibition that usually happens when you're trying to get people to get out of their comfort zone. That was able to happen, and once that happened, and I was able to prove what I could do in terms of working with families, you end up getting more resistance, because I was being authentic. I didn't need to have a title. I'd already been internationally recognized. So I just wanted to get the work done. And then when you begin to start seeing the impact of that work, and comparatively speaking, I'm speaking around the country, major institutions, academic institutions, and getting opportunities. But those opportunities never compelled me more than knowing the fact that I was going to be transformational in the lives of young men, just not on that football level, but that it would be the foundation to do other things in life.
And so then speak on you getting phased out up at King, because I remember you just wasn't there anymore.
You get phased out because it becomes uncomfortable when you challenge people that don't feel like they have to be challenged. And if I recruited a lot of the young men that ended up coming to King, or recruited them when they didn't even know that they were going to play football. So I put myself on the line to get, young men to come participate. And it almost as if it was a slap in the face, because, I could get young men that maybe didn't play football or didn't even have the inkling to want to play, but but I knew from a body type perspective that they could play, and to be able to show them, it almost was like, you had kids that were more loyal to you because you trusted them, and then that trust and loyalty didn't transfer over to the people that weren't, invested in them, and you can see how that imbalance can create issues.
Yeah. How did your impact, or your impact, and then the impact that was taken away from the program, affect the program at King College Prep football as a whole?
I think it undermined what could have been a nationally recognized program by the time you would have been a sophomore or junior in college. It should have been a program, because of where the school is located. Just put it to you like this. Wendell Phillips High School ended up winning 2 state championships, and that should have been King College Prep. But that wasn't the goal. That wasn't the goal.
Yeah. What was the goal, if any? What was the goal?
To serve. It was to serve egos. And that's what the program was about at its inception. It served the ego. It was not there to serve the betterment of the student athlete. It was there to serve, and not even egos, really an ego.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Yeah, I think that's good for the first episode. We got a lot to cover. We haven't even scratched the surface.
No, I don't think we have, but I think just talking about, I think the more we get into that, I think it's going to allow us to transition and other things, because it demonstrates core challenges that we face even today. Like even what we're talking about from your freshman year of high school, and now you're, a plus 30-year-old young man. I'm pretty sure there's some things that, you want to talk about that were inconsistent, that you now look on as you look back on as an adult, that you have questions about. and I want to
man.
make sure I'm here to answer them. And I hope that we can continue to, have these little chats, because it's almost therapeutic. There's much of it I've forgotten because it was such a traumatic experience that you forget about those things. But now that you think about them, it's like, this is what a great opportunity we have to talk about.
Exactly. And so, hey, thanks for tuning in to the DeProgram. This has been the first episode with LeAlan and Miles, dude. We'll see you next time.
Hey, it's been a long time. Look like we got our first one in the belt.
Yeah.